Eidos, Montreal, and Eidos, Sherbrooke have or are, I guess it doesn't really matter which way you go with that, officially moving to a 4-day, 32-hour work week. Finding efficiencies, this is all, I pulled like bits and pieces of this and put together this paragraph based on the release that they put out about this. So finding efficiencies in the scheduling, like reducing meeting run times, which I think they stated, for example, they're going to take from an hour for all the meetings down to a half an hour instead. Which that by itself would have made a lot of people happy, because how many people love going to meetings and sitting there for no fucking reason while it wastes all their work time? So finding efficiencies in things like reducing meeting run times and other avenues to ensure that it isn't about cramming more work into fewer hours so much as promoting healthier and more efficient and focused work in fewer hours to allow for a better work-life balance that should lend to happier, more productive employees, as seen in pilot programs for similar work weeks in other areas of the sector and the world. And there have been in multiple countries now and in similar sectors and other sectors, many large companies piloting programs for 4-day work weeks to see what it did to productivity, what it did to work efficiency, and what it did to overall employee satisfaction and retention, things of that nature, burnout, and all the other factors that you could list. And so they're saying pilots look good enough to us. We're going in for it. So they're the first in the video game market, at least over here on this side of the pond. I don't think it's happened anywhere else, but it's been discussed in other places. They're the first one. They're dipping the toes in the water. What do you think, Mr. Black? You got a smirk on your face. What do you think about the 4-day, 32-hour work week? I can't wait to hear about the grind. What do we got?
Well, I mean, you already know where I'm at, man. You already know how I'm built. So, you know.
But if you get the same output, so if it's all about making money and the money at the end is the same, and the quality of the output is the same, but you have employees that aren't burnt out and enjoy themselves more and don't get employee turnover, so you're not replacing people with HR constantly, does it matter? Or is it only a case of it matters if we go a 4-day work week as 32 hours and suddenly productivity tanks out and like the end result is we're making less money, et cetera, et cetera?
I mean, it's hard. It's hard to quantify what exactly is productive, right? Because like, there needs to be a longer sample size.
Well, this will be something that we have to wait 1 to 3 years to get like and see the bottom lines of all of those that take this dive, right?
Yeah, I mean, my guess is kudos. Listen, kudos to them. All right. Obviously, their hearts are in the right place. They're looking out for their employees, which most don't really give a shit.
It's certainly the antithesis of what we hear about in the video game industry a lot, where it's like
it's like
crazy crunch time and stuff.
The movie industry is going through the same thing right now, where there's potentially gonna be a massive strike.
It definitely seems like an entertainment industry specific deal, where like the crunch,
it's the arts, right? Yeah. This is what happens when you're an artist, right? This isn't like a blue collar job. This is arts. This is expression. This is you just have it harder. Period. In virtually every art there is. I mean, I'm not going to be a Debbie Downer and say like, oh, these guys are crazy and whatnot. It's their company. It's their business. I mean, if they wanna do and promote 4-day, 30-hour, 32-hour work weeks, all the power to them. We will see, which I can tell you, the vast majority of gaming developers and publishers, they're never going to do this, ever. Because this is going to absolutely fuck. I don't care what anybody says. This is going to screw up deadlines. 100%. And we will see if this turns out to be, hey, we're promoting 4-day, 32-hour work weeks, but in the last month or 2 months of production, we're all going overtime. Overtime. Because while we've been enjoying sitting at home for 3 days a week, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of ground that is not being taken. I mean, imagine corporate calling up this company and going, hey, how's it going? I'm not sure. It's going good. It's Thursday. All right. Which means we'll be back in office on Monday. All right. We'll let you know on Monday. It's just like, unless they are keeping it around the clock and they're hiring more people and they're getting certain people to work on these days so that they have 3 days off, but the production is going 7 days a week, right? Or 6 days a week, right? Or 5. I don't know. I really don't know. But I'm going to be honest. I don't buy into 4-day work weeks to be more productive than a 5 or 6 day work week. I don't see it. I mean, listen, if you get an employee that actually gets more work done in a 4-day, 32-hour work week than a 5-day, 40-hour work week, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. What are they doing? You know what I mean? This means there's absolutely no room for slack in any way, shape, or form, or anything during these 4 days, 32 hours. This is like, you are dialed the fuck in. Like, you better be happier than a pig in shit. Like, you better come to work with a big ass smile on your face, and just get ready to get shit done. So, I mean, I don't know. You need a longer sample size, but 4-day, 32-hour work week, it just seems very counterproductive. I mean, if this was like a firefighter that was like, had to be on call for 24 hours or whatever, this makes sense. But crazy. It's just crazy. And there'll be people that are like, there's going to be tons of people like, oh man, yeah, dude, if I only had to work 4 days a week, I'd be so much happier too. Yeah, fuck, we all would be happier. Yeah. If I only had to work four days a week, I'd probably feel pretty good too. But it's all about how your employer is going to, press your ass, and what those deadlines come down to.
Yeah, I think within the, if we're just going to talk specifically, I guess, about, what I'm going to say is specific to the video game industry anyway, I suppose, although you could probably extrapolate it to other areas as well, or expand it to other areas, is that ultimately, I guess it comes down to, what are the goals of the company, right? So if the goal of the company is to produce good games that make all of their money back and then some, obviously enough to grow the company at a whatever rate that they find as the company acceptable, then that's the mark that they're shooting for. For some companies, that's going to be an ever climbing thing where they want to be top. They want to be the next Activision. They want to go from just being like a developer to a publisher to the largest fucking entity in the market and continue to climb that ladder that way. Then that is unlikely to be achievable within a I wouldn't say impossible, but obviously far more difficult because of the rigors of trying to get to that point. Within a 4 hour or 4-day, 32-hour work week schedule. Unless, like Jeff was saying, for example, you did something where perhaps you scaled back employee compensation, but you said 4 hours, 32, or 4 days for 32 hours, and then the scaled back compensation allowed them to run split shift 4 days, so that's running 24 hours a day, 7 days, which would be like you're basically doing a nursing rotation to that point where you got back shift workers.
Well, you almost have to.
And day shift workers.
Yeah, how do you games?
Well, if you're doing it that way, then it's obviously the compensation and how it would increase the cost of the game, and so there would have to be the game would have to make more money by virtue of being out sooner. But that's not necessarily what makes a game a bunch of money. It's not. So it depends on like the industry, like how important is being first to market with something new, or just is it the next iteration of your thing? How much does that shift the bottom line if you do it that way? And if that's the case, then maybe we can afford to do a 24-hour rotational shift where people are getting paid like 70 or 60% of their total, but then we have people working back shift, front shift over and over again. But yeah, within this instance, you know, and knowing Eidos in terms of the games that they've produced and whatnot, they're not a company that's out there chasing. They're not trying to be Ubisoft where they go out to their shareholders and say we're aiming to make 5 AAA titles a year. Eidos is definitely not chasing 5 AAA titles a year. Eidos traditionally is let's get one game done well, and if it's making us money and it's still growing the company, then that's our mark, and go for it. And I think that company goal or endpoint is obviously far more achievable within the confines of a 4-day, 32-hour work week than it would be if you were, again, trying to be, let's say, Ubisoft or an Activision or something, and trying to chase the dragon, so to speak, in that regard. To the point where, like, Activision's got, at one point, they had, 3 studios doing Call of Duty on a 6-month rotation. What was it? Treyarch, Sledgehammer Games, and one more. And it was literally every 6 months a Call of Duty. Like, that's a different animal, and would be much more complicated to pull off. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I know that I haven't had a chance to read any of the more recent ones. I know that the 4-day work week was in part being looked into and studied more when I was in university in places, more specifically Europe than it was here. It wasn't, and most of this originates in Europe, and then it trickles over here later on, to my recollection anyway. So it's not new, and some studies have been running for a long time, but I do feel that this is, in my opinion, incredibly industry specific, and then company goal specific in terms of what are you aiming to accomplish as the company, and then is that possible within the confines of this? Because the raw data that they have discovered, whether it's in a short term or a long term thus far, and again, I don't know about industry-specific stuff like the video game industry. It's that, by and large, especially within office work and things of that nature, people accomplish the same amount of productivity within a shorter, basically the concept is a much shorter window of time than is the required, which if you've ever worked an office job, you probably have experienced at some point. I know I did, where there were many days of the week where there was literally no more work that I could do. They had nothing else to give me, but I was at work and there were still 4 hours left in the workday. I was just efficient enough at my job to be done by, like, let's say lunchtime, 1 o'clock. And I started creating work for myself where I was, because there was nothing else for me to do. And that's not like super uncommon, where you'll get a lot of periods or multiple days where people are just pretending to work because there's nothing else to do. And that's been a meme and a common stereotype for years. And so while it's not every job in every industry, and that would be my take, it's certainly not everything that it applies to. I think there are probably some places that can work that out. And then, like anything, it's up to the company as to whether or not they compensate their employees the exact same amount, or if they scale back the pay based on the hours. And I think that for a lot of people, if you took their pay from 100% down to 80% of that pay scale, or even 75 or 70%, and then offer them a 4-day work week, I think a lot of people would take it, if only because they could, if they wanted to, like with the gig economy as it is now, they could take up a gig on the side and also have more personal time and probably make enough money that while not feeling as overworked for the 100% of the pay scale. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. And it's one of those things that we're getting into the point now, like we're seeing here, where companies are actually employing it. And so now we'll get to see, and hopefully more industries, so that we have examples from not just gaming, but other industries as well in different sectors to be able, and different places in the world too, where different cultures dictate different work-life balances, to see how it all works out. because that is also something that you don't think about sometimes, is that other places, the work-life balance is treated totally differently, and their work schedules are already different than what we would, for example, have here in North America versus what they have somewhere else, like whether that's Japan or within certain countries within Europe, et cetera, et cetera. So there you go. Eidos, first one to take the dive, to my knowledge, within the video game industry, and we'll see if they're the last.
Oh, they will be.
From there, I bet you that this will crop up in B tier and under. And by that, I don't mean in terms of quality, but in terms of like the size of the company. I think this will skew to indie and mid and B tier, because their goals are different from the megacorp level, and so this will probably float in around there.
I still don't think this definitely sounds more of an individual business philosophy and a work environment that the owners, the CEO feels deeply about. It might even be, a play to the industry, pandering a little bit to, hey guys, if y'all don't like working at wherever 60 hours a week, look what we do. 4-hour work weeks. 4-day work weeks, 32 hours.
Definitely an incentive for some people, for sure. For sure.
It's a big incentive. Especially if they're keeping salary. That's the other thing. It's like, are you keeping people's salaries the same as what you were paying when they were working 40 hours or 48 hours a week? Like, are you scaling down how much money they make as well? Like these details aren't being said, right? So like, we don't know. Like they might say, hey, there's absolutely no chance for overtime. There's absolutely, we can't pay you for your 40 hours a week. We have to pay you for 32. Kudos to these guys if they are still paying the same salaries and they're giving people essentially an extra day off a week to do whatever they want with their time. The vast majority of those employees will not do side gigs to make more money. They'll just take more time off, and all the power to them. And all the power to them. Yeah. I mean, shit. If Twitch was paying me to do four days a week, and I was making the same money as I was making working 6 or 7 days a week, fucking damn right, I'm gonna sing that shit to the. I mean, hell yeah, I ain't complaining at all. You guys are amazing. But it's the details that matter, man. What are these guys gonna be like come the finish line when they need this game done? For the big dogs up at top, that's going, motherfuckers, like, fuck your 32-hour work weeks. We need this shit done. Because while you guys are down there playing with your little bit of money, we up here like dealing with some big time dollars. That's why you'll never see these big developers do that. It's just never going to happen. But hey, if they can make that shit happen in their own environment and they can create some really great working atmosphere, fuck, I'm all for it, man. You're not going to hear me complain. I mean,
yeah, shit. I think it's very similar. It's kind of like, now that you mentioned it too, it's similar to the concept of like when people get bought out for contracts, people are like, why would you do that on like Twitch and stuff, or like when they took Mixer contracts, and it wasn't just about the bag, because they were going to make that money more or less wherever they went.
Yeah,
it was about the fact that the stipulated streaming hours for the same amount of money went from they have to really grind it out to, 30-something hours a week.
Yeah, 40-hour weeks opposed to 60, 70-hour weeks. I mean,
and you're done. And the time is the much more valuable at that point than the money, and so you go that route for that reason.
Time is the most precious commodity that we all have.
Exactly.
If I could free up 30 hours a week and I'm getting paid the same, you take that every single time. And there is truth to the statement. You're going to work better and be more fresh and happier as an employee doing that. The real question is, can the employer afford to do that? And how long can they do that? Because they have costs. They just do.
Here's another... Yeah, no, sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done, sorry.
I was going to say, like, you might be more productive, and even if you aren't more productive, you just might be happier and that shit just rubs off on everybody else, just making it a better, that shit comes off in your work and everything, right? Like you just more
You
attention
often
to
do
detail.
better work when you're happy. I mean, that's kind of
100%.
yeah.
100%, right?
Yeah.
So, that is absolutely true. But the real question is, can the employer stay true to the word, pay you the same amount, and do this long term? Are they still going to have business that's going to want to deal with them? There's a lot of companies that take a lot of, listen, I take a whole lot of value from contractors. I'll use a real estate example. When I do major renovations, specifically when I did this renovation on this triplex, I gutted it. I had to deal with so many different contractors, and I was the general contractor. So I had to go out and talk to everybody. Now, there are contractors, and there are quite a few of them, that will only work Monday to Friday. Don't call them before 8 a.m. Don't call them after 5 p.m. They're not answering. They're literally not answering their phone. It's going to voicemail. We'll be back. Now, for them, sure, a lot of them are mom and pop shops that value their off time. Now, for somebody like me, that is a go guy, that's just like, no, I want answers. I want them now. I value a company or an individual that is willing to drop what they're doing or work that extra hour. If I call them at 6, 7 p.m., they're willing to go out of their comfort zone or bust their ass a little harder to get the job done. And the real question is this company still going to be able to attract a lot of these clients that are exactly that? And the vast majority of the big clients are that. We need to get our shit done. When the world is on fire and everybody's screaming and blowing down your back, you got to be able to get there and get the shit done. That's going to be the real question. It's why a lot of these industries don't do that. It's why it's like that in the healthcare system. It's like that in the movie business and virtually everything is because there's too much pressure. Shit has to get done. There's deadlines. Every time a game goes longer, every day, it's like a movie. Every day a movie goes on is costing them sometimes hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars just from having everybody on set chilling. Fuck, you got to pay everybody. You got to feed people. Got to keep the lights on. We'll see how they can do it, man. It's impressive if they can.
So for them at least, I don't think that Eidos often, although I could be wrong with this, I don't think they do, because I think they're pretty busy with their own stuff right now. I don't think that they're somebody that gets outsourced a lot to other companies to do bigger projects. They might occasionally, but I think they mostly do their own stuff, which is probably also why they're going to be able to experiment with this and do their thing. Yeah. And when it comes to that, I think that's like one of those things where you're on like a strike system, right? Where if you are a company that does do work for other companies to help them with larger projects, like let's say Crystal Dynamics working with the Initiative to create the new Perfect Dark game, because they needed to scale up the team, and it just so happens that the leader of the Initiative was also the leader of Crystal Dynamics for a time, so that was a convenient merger, but that similar thing where they're working with another development house. That's a thing where you say, all right, we need you to get this thing done, and it needs to be done by this date. You either hit it within your, and they, working with them that they're on a 4-day week, 32 hours.
Yep.
At the end of the day, for the major project, it will all come down to, is the thing done when it needs to be done, and is it to specification or better? If they hit that, they're never going to, they could work 1 day a week, they don't give a fuck. Because they're paying for an end product that needs to be done by a certain time. But if they show up and say, hey guys, it slipped a little bit, and when we went home on Thursday, we just didn't have the time to get it done before Monday, obviously that then becomes a problem, and then you probably don't get calls from people in the future. That's a different situation. Apparently, according to chat, somebody was saying that they did address, so the pay is staying the same as a 40-hour week, but they didn't talk about overtime yet. So the pay stays the same, but the overtime portion hasn't been discussed, at least not publicly. Like, Lord knows what the fuck internally they've talked about.
Well, I mean, overtime is still past 40 hours, right? So, overtime isn't 33 hours. right?
No,
So,
no, but like in terms of when people were asking, do they get the same amount of like the salary? Does it
Yeah.
remain the same, scaled on a 40-hour week to a 30? That stays the same,
well,
but
that's good.
we don't know about like if there was crunch, like for example, and there was overtime.
Mhm.
How does that pan out? Because it is the video game industry. I do suspect that in the last, 2 to 3 months of the development of a game, where there tends to be the most crunch, although crunch in some of the bigger companies are like fucking 2 years now, which doesn't even that's not crunch anymore. You're just working a job that has you at the office for 16 hours. That's not crunch. That's your job now. Is you're there as long as a fucking brain surgeon performing expensive surgery for long periods of time. Then I suspect that, that will be a discussion as well, because I don't think in this industry, even if you're doing your own projects like they would be most of the time, I don't think you get away with not having some level of crunch. It's just how much and for how long and what's the pay look like for that. And that will be an ultimate thing that we see in a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. It will be like whatever. I don't know what their latest project is going to be or what their next project is going to be, but what will really be telling is how does the next major project that they're starting from scratch, how does that turn out now that they've switched to this?
3 months of crunch instead of one. That's
Well,
what
one
I,
month
that's
of
what I
crunch.
think.
One
That's
month of
what I
crunch
think.
doesn't exist in video games. You either like you're
6
most
months of crunch instead of 3. That's what I think will happen. But
Yeah.
we'll see.
We'll see how it all.
Hey, kudos
how it
to
all works
them.
out.
I'm not hating on it. Go
so
ahead.
the last example that I had that isn't a direct analog, but it did just pop into my mind is that when I was in university, I had friends that went to Dalhousie, and then I was at St. Mary's, and both for business. Friends in business at Dal, friends of business at SMU, and SMU runs on a 4-day week. Fridays are off at SMU, with the exception of occasionally labs for certain classes might happen on a Friday, but otherwise the main bulk of your school week is Monday through Thursday. Whereas at Dow for the business side, there was a 5-day cycle. You covered the same amount of work at SMU as you did at Dow, and in fact, in one instance, your stats course within St. Mary's, not only were you on a 4-day week, but for business statistics, you covered in Dow what they did in 2 semesters, you did it in 1 semester. So you did on a 4-day week in 1 semester what Dow did in 5-day week in 2 semesters for business statistics. And yet you covered the same shit and it was all done, and I didn't feel rushed. Like, I didn't feel like I was like, holy fuck, I've got so much shit going, I can't fucking keep it all up. And I didn't feel any more under pressure as a student than the business students that I was friends with at Dalhousie within a 5-day week with the same curriculum. I don't know. I don't have any more of an analog to say, but to it, but to know that there are certainly circumstances where you can be doing the same amount of work in less time and not suffer for it and still allow, and what it allowed on the back end was more study time, which was great, or more time for projects. So when you had group projects that were a nightmare, and you had 5 people and you were the only one doing the work in the group, the classic fucking example, you had 3 days before the next fucking week came around, you had to have it done instead of 2 days. So there were benefits to it. I will say that the business statistics, 1 semester, 4-day week, it was tough, fucking hard, but at the same time, I still did well in the class, and I enjoyed it. I think more of it came down to whether your professor was good than the amount of time that you spent in the classroom.
That's what's going to happen in this specific situation. It's just like if you're doing a 4-day work week, like there is zero time for downtime, slack, none of that, right? So like, you better hope that extra day off preps you for the intense, nonstop work that you are going to be doing. Because the thought of it, sometimes some people like breaking up their work so that they have those moments to have a smoke break and check their phone and watch a little bit of Twitch.
The smoke break, yes, the classic.
I'm serious. Like,
no, I understand. I get it.
People get this, what they get through. Like, listening to our podcast on the side. There's people that are working right now. Just different things like that. Like, that shit goes away when you're getting rid of eight productive hours of working, that is a big chunk of time. And you better be prepared to get your ass in shape. One of the good things for the company is they're probably going to find out very quickly who the real workers are and who ain't. That's what it's boiled down to.
Which is fair ball. That's great news for them. Like
Yeah.
if this allows you to find who your really valued employees are, amazing.
Yeah.
As an added benefit for them. But there you go.